Hello. 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 And welcome to the ellenmade book club. My name is Ellen, and I like to read books. I'm starting this new channel, and I've been seeing the newbie tag pop up all over the place, so I just figured why not do that as well. I just filmed 2 other videos about books, and I have the house to myself for a while longer, so I just figured I might take advantage of that and answer some questions that nobody asked. I might do these out of order or do my own thing. This is the interesting part, isn't it? A bit of darkness, a bit of depth. It's a world in a book that you can just step into. Happy to cry. I'm not opposed to some magic. I'm on a journey to push myself to do things that I think is fun, because for a long time I haven't. Part of it is the social anxiety and shyness and all of that. Like, that doesn't really interest me. I used to read a lot when I was younger. My parents used to read to me when I was, before I could read, and when I learned how to read myself, I read a lot of books. I really enjoyed reading, and yeah, that was just a hobby of mine. There were children's stories, and as I got a little bit older, I read books that were for my, age group. I always got books for Christmas and birthdays and stuff like that, and I always wanted them. So I read the Harry Potter books, obviously. I was about 12 years old when the first one came out, so devoured those, read those over and over again. I continued reading throughout my 20s, but not as much, I think. There was so much reading at university, and then you have to work and do all the grown-up things. So then I didn't read as much anymore. And the last few years I haven't been reading much at all because life. But then I started reading again last fall, and I really enjoyed it again, and that feels really good. And I'm kind of on a personal journey to sort of find my way back to myself again, if that makes sense, and do the things that I actually do enjoy doing and have always enjoyed doing, like arts and crafts and reading and all kinds of things. Not on this channel, but maybe on others. So the next question I'll do is number 4. Why do you love reading? Reading for me is a lot of things, as I think it is for most people. I find it very relaxing, and I always have, and entertaining, educational. It's an emotional experience. It's seeing the world through someone else's eyes, both the author's eyes and the character's eyes, and it's a world in a book that you can just step into and experience something that you don't necessarily experience in your own life. And it can also be something that you do experience in your own life, and that can be a comfort of reading a story about something similar and feeling less alone, I guess. I'm also a bit of a language nerd. I've studied foreign languages, and I've always been interested in that. And I find, the way that you can just paint a picture with words, with black little scribbles on a page, and then that makes an image in my mind that can be so vivid. I don't know, I just think it's fascinating, and it's a nice experience. And these days, it's a very nice break from screen time. Question number 9, where do you read? In the summertime, I might read outside, in the garden. Sometimes I sit on the couch, but I usually read before bed. So, question number 10, what kind of books do you like to read? This is the interesting part, isn't it? So, I'm not really sure how to answer it. I think I could be interested in reading pretty much anything, as long as it has some kind of depth to it, but not necessarily too deep. In terms of weight of a book, not the physical weight, but the emotional weight and depth. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't usually enjoy too fluffy of a book. I haven't read a lot of romantic rom-com-y kind of books, but the ones that I have read over the years haven't really been my favorite. So that's not something that I have been picking up as often. I do have some on my TBR pile now, just to, maybe things have changed, maybe I have evolved. I also don't like the other end of the spectrum of horror. I don't like horror movies. I don't like anything too scary. I don't enjoy that. I do like a good thriller or like, you know, psychological, mystery, thrillery kind of books, just as long as they don't scare me. I'm not really looking to be devastated by a book. I'm happy to cry. I don't mind being moved by a book, like moved to tears, for whatever reason. I don't want to be devastated by a book, you know? I don't think. Maybe I'll build up to that. I don't know. Build up some tolerance. But usually I go for something with a female character or female author, female perspective. And I think I'm drawn to like psychology, morality, you know, ethics, a bit of darkness, a bit of depth. And then I also want something cozy, comforting, you know, hopeful, something empowering to sort of balance that heaviness, you know. I like a bit of fantasy and magic and witchcraft kind of thing. I haven't read a lot of like super fantasy kind of books, I don't think, but I'm not opposed to some magic. I like a book that gives me a new perspective and maybe insight into another culture or another situation, or, you know, usually there's some hardship. I don't lean towards biographies that much. I might, like if it's a true story, if it's like more like a memoir, more like a true story based on, like a story based on true events, absolutely. But I'm not gonna pick up a book like about a celebrity. I don't lean towards poetry that much. I might enjoy poetry, but it's just not something that I pick up that often. Historical fiction, sure. Science fiction, absolutely, depending on what the twist is to the world. As long as there are elements of like the human experience in that, or like the emotional experience and, you know, stuff to navigate. And I guess most of them are, but I feel like it's more about the world building maybe, and like the, you know, describing all of the other stuff, and I'm not really, like that doesn't really interest me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this channel and why I started it and, you know, all of that stuff. The reason I'm starting the channel is basically because it looks fun and I'm on a journey to push myself to do things that I think is fun, because for a long time I haven't. I've kind of pushed my own interests to the bottom of the list of priorities and, you know, been so focused on work and like household things or other like life things that I've kind of been neglecting my own soul and my interests and hobbies. And now that I've started reading again, I really feel like myself again, and I kind of just want to share that. I want to share my thoughts on books. I want to document my thoughts on books, and hopefully, you know, find a community that likes a similar kind of vibe that I go for, and we can, you know, talk about the books and give each other recommendations, and you know, it's just for fun. It's just a fun time. It's also a way to be creative and to try to, you know, put myself out there. I'm a bit of an introvert and socially anxious person, so I'm not the most outspoken in any setting, and so this is a way for me to talk about books without being interrupted or without someone talking over me. I can just say whatever I want, and then you can, you know, add your piece in the comments and we can respectfully talk to each other one at a time down there, okay? It's also a great way for me to practice my English speaking. I consume a lot of English language through music, movies, TV shows, books, but I don't speak English a lot, and that takes practice as well. And, you know, I'm not a native English speaker, so I think we all have something to contribute to BookTube, just being who we are. And, you know, you can watch 15 booktubers and still not find one that has similar tastes to you or similar reading habits, or, you know, the world of books is just so varied, and there are so many people reading and so many books to read and so many genres and so many, you know, writing styles and so many ways to talk about books that I think, you know, there definitely is room for everyone. I don't know if there's an age gap that I can fill. I see a lot of younger booktubers and I see some older ones. Maybe my perspective as a Scandinavian person is interesting, I don't know. I don't think I will be discussing books on a very academic level. I think I lean more towards talking about books and how they affected me, or like the emotional dilemmas in the books or whatever, or like if it was an interesting perspective, the concept, more of that thing, or like if the character is interesting. I don't know. What challenges do you think starting a YouTube channel would be the hardest to overcome? Okay, so part of it is the social anxiety and shyness and all of that. I'm trying to ignore that and just hope that you who are watching will be kind, basically. Another challenge will be like posting regularly and, you know, finding the time in life to sit down and talk about books. I might not read fast enough for videos to be interesting often enough. But I'm also like not starting this channel for it to become like this huge success or anything. It's not a business plan. It's just for fun, and hopefully someone watches it. That would make it more fun. But you know, for now I'm just doing it for me, just to talk about books and, I don't know, give it a shot. Why not? I think what I'm most excited for is like one person writing in the comments, you know, finally I found someone with a similar book taste to me. You know, someone getting a good recommendation from one of my videos. Someone having another perspective, like a different perspective from me on a book that we've both read. And, you know, just discussing that would be fun. Okay, so the last question is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? I'm not really sure who my favorite booktubers are. I'm not very deep into this world. I'm sure there are a lot of booktubers that I have never even seen, like some really big ones. I guess I would ask them what perspective they maybe haven't explored in their reading, and you know, challenge them to find a book that offers a perspective that they haven't yet experienced, whether that be, you know, from an author from a different country, different gender, different sexuality, different, you know, life story from them, you know, something that they haven't, you know, something new, a new perspective that they haven't experienced yet. That's my version of the Booktube Newbie Tag. I hope you found it somewhat interesting and that you have some sense of what my taste is, and, you know, if we maybe seem to like the same kind of thing. I don't know. If you want to find out a bit more about my taste in books, here's a video about 9 books that I bought recently. If you have been thinking about starting a booktube channel, this is your sign. Yeah, I hope to talk to you more in the comments, and see you soon. Bye.